Hello and welcome to another No Distance Record podcast, the latest in our series in which we talk to people who are involved in the music industry. And today you can see, if you're looking at this on YouTube, the gorgeous face of Eliot Odgers. Odgers, is that how I pronounce the
It's
surname?
Odgers.
Odgers. You see, I
Yeah.
made a mistake already. Eliot Odgers is the founder and the editor of Still Listening magazine, which is a magazine. Well, I think you can describe it better than me, but it's a magazine which focuses on what undiscovered, up and coming, the big boys and girls of tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we try to focus mainly on like newer artists and yeah, kind of give support to artists who don't really get the opportunity to get in like an NME or something like that.
Well, I want to talk to you later on about the state of the industry, and I think we'll probably touch on the enemy as well. But first, I wanted to get a little bit about you because to sort of go into music journalism at this time, when it's perhaps seen as perhaps not the growth industry that it once was, or maybe you'll set me straight on that. You started this in 2020. I think the first issue came out October 2020. How did that all come about? What planted the idea for you to bring out a print product in this sort of digital era?
I think so originally where it came from, it was probably to do with I also part-time work as like a buyer in record shops. So I was working at Rough Trade at the time. And then I was seeing like So Young and stuff and like this kind of smaller one, which is more like a pamphlet than a magazine called Secret Meeting.
Right.
And
Is that
I
the one
reached
that folds out and it's like
yeah,
a
yeah,
chart?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah.
So I reached out to them to ask if they needed someone to do some writing. And then like maybe a month later, COVID happened. And then I think I just decided, oh well, if I'm gonna do writing for them, why don't I just do my own magazine?
But
So I
that's a hell of a leap, though, right? A mental leap to go. Well, I could write for them, or I could completely throw myself into this media. I mean, had you had any notions of that before? Is it something that's been bubbling away for a few years, or was it literally kind of drop the marmalade moment when you're making your breakfast in the morning?
I think it was always something that I'd been interested in. When I was younger, when I was like 16, 17, I wanted to do music journalism as kind of like a profession. But then I guess people back then were saying print is dead, all of this, and I think it kind of discouraged me, but I still wanted to work in the industry. So I kind of put the idea to bed back then. And then, COVID happened and my younger brother was studying English literature at university, so I thought it would be a cool opportunity for him to have something when he finished, to have like a little, editing a magazine type thing. And I'd always wanted to do it, so I just thought, fuck it, why not? Can I
How do,
swear?
was how'd you get from the fuck it, why not to the print product? Because most people perhaps would have that idea and go, oh, I'll just do it as like a website thing, right? It'll be an Instagram account, it'll be a website, and that'll fulfill. What made you want to do the tangible thing of print?
Maybe it was working in record shops because it's that physical thing. It's like being able to hold something in your hands. Like it's important.
Yeah, I mean, I've always felt, being in bands over the years that getting a review, I always thought getting a review in a magazine that you can kind of show your gran. I always thought there was something cooler about that than like having it on a website. Obviously, having a website is important, of course, but like you, I thought that tangible thing of being able to put it in a drawer and bring it out a couple of years later, I've always prized that much more.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It has a lot more sentimental value to it as well. Um, but yeah, I think you're right, and I think I've noticed that the longer we've done it, how smaller bands were given opportunities in the print to, they've clearly used that as like a stepping stone to get something else. So in that sense, it's been really rewarding.
Uh, when you started though and you had the idea, was it a case of you doing it all, or did you ring up like two or three or four mates who you thought would be on board with this, or how did that all work? How did that work in the very beginning?
So originally it was kind of like me and my brother, we were doing most of the reviews, and then at some point we decided, to get a website up and plan the print issue properly. And then from there we got maybe a few friends who wanted to do a bit of writing, and then it kind of just snowballed into like people reaching out to us and us reaching out to other people, and eventually we built quite a nice team of writers.
And you talked about other magazines like So Young is kind of similar, I guess. You know, it's a similar kind of product. But what do you think marks you out as slightly different to those magazines?
I think originally we wanted to be kind of like So Young, but without the kind of like, not that I have any beef with So Young, but maybe without the like pretentious energy that comes with a magazine like that.
Yeah.
No, we wanted to be a bit more accessible and a little bit less serious. You know,
And did you always have a kind of genre in mind? I mean, I look at your stuff, and it is sort of what I would consider,
it's very
uh,
indie.
yeah, indie. But I don't mean that in a kind of derogatory way. I don't mean that in a kind of landfill indie way. I mean that as a kind of
Yeah.
people pushing the boundaries, but maybe starting off with, okay, we've got two guitars and a bass player. What can we do with that? And then going on beyond that. Was that kind of always is that where your music interest is?
I think for me, like the music I'm probably strongest in genre-wise is that kind of indie alternative sphere. But I've always been a massive fan of like pop music and hip hop, and hip hop especially. It's harder to get these kind of artists in the magazine because they just don't seem to get either they don't seem to get the same access that some of the India artists do, and we don't get the same access to them as we would with India artists. So
And when you got that first issue done and you were holding it in your hands, was there a sense of, oh fuck, what have we done? We've got to get rid of it, got to sell this, or was it just pure joy, or what was it like? This is the end of something or the beginning of something? What was the feeling at that moment?
um, it was definitely joy. Like I've still got copies, and I was just looking through some older copies actually, and we've came a long way. And I guess when I started it, I didn't, it's with still listening. I think it's a good. It's kind of like we it was all a learning curve, and it still is a learning curve. And it was there's been plenty of times in my life where, and I bet a lot of people like have an idea and then they just procrastinate and don't actually do it. But with the magazine, it was like a thing where we kept doing it, and it got better and better as each issues went on, really.
I was going to say, what have you learned from, if you go back to Eliot putting together issue one or issue two, or issue three?
Tons
What
of things,
what,
especially,
what advice would you give?
especially what advice would I give?
Yeah,
Well, with things like InDesign, it took a while to get my head around, like, because I didn't have very much design experience, so it took a while to get my head around things like bleeds and like working out how to fit things in a nice way and how to like split pages without the image getting chopped into the gutter and stuff.
synced into the, yeah, where the staples are, kind of thing.
Yeah. So definitely on those kind, like with the design type stuff, there was a lot I've learned over the years. Um, but in terms of like I think the main thing I try to do these days is just try and curate good artists to go in it. And I think that's something that, like, looking back on the magazine, I'm like really happy with how it went, because there's so many artists that we were like on the ball at the time with, like Jockstrap or the Last Dinner Party. We never got an interview with them, but we were almost going to book them for a gig, and we were in talks, but it just, they're huge now.
Then the Rolling Stones called instead, and you were like,
Yeah.
oh well, we can't really compete with that. I mean, that takes us on to the. I mean, actually, I wanted to say you had one of my favorite bands, the Beths, didn't you, on one of your covers? And
Oh
I
yeah, 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 yeah.
love the band. I can't believe they're not bigger over here because they're just like great sort of bubblegummy kind of pop, but they do everything slightly tongue in cheek, but not to the point of it being like pastiche. I just love them. I think they're great. I love their style. Um, but you talked there about booking Last Dinner Party for gigs, and you do that as well as the magazine, right? You don't just report on what's going on, you make stuff happen. Was that
Yeah.
always the plan from the beginning, or was it a case of as you were doing it, you thought, oh no, I want to be on the pitch as well as on the sidelines here?
I think that's the thing with running the magazine. It's like we've always tried to, improve it in any way that we can. So at some point, an opportunity came our way to start doing events at Old Blue Last with Flashback Records.
Yeah.
So we were doing these events with them, and we didn't have any. Same with the magazine. It's like we didn't have any experience doing it, and then we just started doing it. Now we've done like, 20 plus events or something ridiculous. So we've that was all a learning curve as well.
And what was the most important bit of that gradient of the learning curve there? Was it making sure you had the right kind of axle together? Was it how to promote it? What would you learn from that?
Um I think the thing is, like, we got lucky with a lot of bands, in the in the booking sense. We've booked bands that, almost all the bands we've booked have kind of gone on to bigger things. So, and we got them like on the cheap. And it's funny watching these bands go from like very small support artists to like, you know, like Alien Chicks or Butch Cassidy or the Queen's Head, or all of these bands kind of became much bigger than when we originally booked them.
And you
So
also you put out a cassette, right? You are listeners to this podcast will know that I talk about cassettes a lot. I put out an album on cassette. No one bought it on cassette. I'm not blaming the format. I'm blaming me. I think the format can work, and you proved it because you put out a cassette. You did volume one. Have you done more than one volume? Or so you did
So,
volume
so
one,
we've actually done two cassettes.
right?
We did and this is another thing, it's just like trying stuff and seeing how it goes. It's like we did so when King Gizzard put out like some live bootlegs, we
Yes.
did a kind of, we were like, oh, let's not just do live in London or live in Paris or whatever. Let's do our own little thing where we do like a kind of like takes what we did was we took all of the kind of chilled out songs from those live shows and made our own little like chilled gizzard compilation, which kind of was like, for me, like I wanted to do something a bit more original. So that actually worked really well. Like we put that out on cassette at first, and we sold like 100 cassettes in the space of like a week. And then it was like, okay, maybe we should do a vinyl. So we did a vinyl, and then that sold really well as well. And then that live at Old Blue Last thing was just kind of like a sweet thing to end the year with, after doing like a gig kind of every month at Old Blue. And then we kind of got all of the artists who had played the nights, or like most of the artists, to kind of just contribute a song towards it. And
So
then
it wasn't recorded. Was it recorded?
it's not live
Right.
recording, it's kind of just like they've all given a single or
Right.
something.
Right. Right. Great.
And with that, that didn't sell as well as the King Gizzard one did.
Well, I think that's understandable, maybe, but it's still, I think that's still great. And what I love about those things that they're like perfect moments in time, right? So you can look, anyone can look back on that cassette, play that cassette in 5 years' time, and go, that was the sound of that year, that was the sound of that time, and any band that's on that will have that. And I love those kind of mixtapes of this kind of like capturing. They're not even like genre focused. Sometimes they're just like moment in time focused, and I love stuff like that. I think that's so great.
Yeah, and they're nice little keepsakes.
Exactly. Like we did an interview with Dash the Henge, and they said that tapes sell well at gigs because people want to support the band. Maybe they
Yeah.
don't want to carry around a 12-inch vinyl with them or a CD, but they want to buy a cassette. It's £5, £6 maybe, and you put it in your pocket. So I think hopefully cassettes will come back.
It's funny,
Um,
like it felt like they were coming back more kind of like 2019, 2020, and then recently I've noticed it feels like it's dropped a little bit.
yeah, I just want to get your view on this because vinyl at the moment, is obviously back, whatever, not even point saying that. But I've noticed that the price of vinyl is going up a lot at the moment, right? In the shops. I've noticed that a lot of people are doing special editions and sort of really trying to cash in on it, maybe.
I can tell you all about that. It's not the problem of artists trying to up the prices or anything, or special editions costing more money. It's just really the major labels deciding that they can put a higher cost price on something, even though in reality it doesn't cost that much to produce. And then I feel like, and I don't know what other people who work in record stores would think. But I feel like they're kind of deliberately trying to price out record stores so that they can just get all the sales through their website or through the artist's website.
Right.
And the bigger artists, anyway,
Yeah.
smaller independent artists, I think, try to keep it down on the cheap.
Yeah.
But you'll get, say like LCD Sound System records, I think they go for like, 30 dealer or something at the distributors. So they need to be put out in a record shop for like 50 quid or something ridiculous.
Right.
But who wants to pay that? Like,
Do you think that there's a gap therefore because if people still want to own the physical thing of an album, that's where CDs and cassettes might fill that void? Or do you think the vinyl is just such a unique thing? Or do you think people are like, no, I want this physically. I'm not going to spend 50 quid on the vinyl, but I might spend 12, 10 quid on the CD.
you can't. You're completely right. Like from what I've noticed, you know, kids, the like younger kids these days, they're buying CDs because they're cheaper, and they still want like a physical kind of thing, you know, to yeah, to I don't know, I guess to have that sentimental kind of
Mm.
feeling, you know.
Yeah, and it does worry me slightly that the vinyl industry might be just over egging itself a little bit with some of this stuff. But well, there we go.
If you're enjoying this No Distance Records podcast, then why not check out our No Distance Records Release Radar playlist on Spotify and Apple Music. It features under-the-radar acts who have no more than 20,000 listeners or 100,000 plays of a song in their catalog. And if you're not enjoying this podcast, check out our playlist anyway.
Going on to music journalism more generally, I mean, quite bluntly, there's some people who think music journalism is not needed now because if I know a band's putting out a song, I can go on Spotify or Apple Music, I can listen to it. Why do I need to read Eliot's view of the latest release? So why? Tell us why. I mean, obviously, you know, I don't agree with that, but that is the view. How do you respond to that?
Why do people need to
Why does it still need to be music journalism?
mm, there still needs to be music journalism, I think, for smaller artists, and I think music journalism still has its merits in the sense that, you know, if we did an interview with any larger artist, like I'm sure most people would want to read that, especially if they enjoy that artist's music. If it was just a review, I can understand the kind of comments you're making, but I think as well, reviews like a good review, and if you're into reading music reviews, then you know they can actually be quite funny and quite entertaining in themselves. Like they're a kind of entertainment on their own. You don't need the music, and a lot of the time it's about, I guess, trying to encourage people. If it's something we love, you know, trying to encourage them to go out and listen to it if they haven't heard of the artist before.
And you have a whole section on your site, don't you, where you flag up, you know, this you should be listening to this kind of stuff. I think that's great. And how does that come about? Is that literally people sending you stuff in? Is that you hearing something on Spotify or Bandcamp? Is it a mate passing
Um,
you a name?
so over the years we've done things very like differently, and it's kind of like it depends, you know, on, but at the moment we're kind of a little bit more organized with this kind of thing, so we like have a review schedule, you know, we have you know, like an idea of what's going to happen in the next 3 4 months that we actually want to cover, you know, instead of, because I think at this stage, you know, we get so many emails that it is impossible to review everything, you know. So you know, I think a lot of what I do is curating like what I think is valuable, you know. And I think a lot of the time you can kind of tell what's going to, or like for me, I feel like I can tell what's going to be worth talking about and what's not. But even then, you know, there's things that it's very difficult because you know, we're not turning a profit, so we're you know, like it's hard to, you know, a lot of the writers do it just because they love writing about music, so it's like we can't always cover anything even if we wanted to, you know.
So
And
so is this your main job? Is this do you have other jobs you have to do on the side? Are you able to make this as a living?
so um so at the moment, no, which is a shame.
Yeah,
But it's over the years, it's kind of like starting to snowball into something that I could see myself making some money on,
great.
because you know, now more than ever the website gets a lot more traffic than it used to across like the UK and the US. So it's like clearly someone's listening, someone's following. Um, but yeah, like I do work part time. I still do music buying, but for flashback records now instead of, I used to do it at Rough Trade, but now
Right.
yeah.
Um, Part of the thing that I think you've done really well is you've created like a community, right? And that comes not through just the magazine, but it comes through the events. And like you said, you put out a couple of physical things as well. Is that the way that people, and you do collaborations, right? Big Richard Records, you do stuff with them. Is that the way that you think the industry or the whole sector's got to be now? It feels like people have to collaborate a lot more now to get things done, whether it's artists and venues and promoters and or bands with other bands. Is that right? Is that, or do you think it's always been like that? Maybe I just haven't noticed.
I think it's definitely helpful. In fact, like I think it's like one of the best things you can do in any area of the music industry, collaborating with other people, because you learn a lot and you but I think the main reason I like doing it is because it's just nice to do, you know, and it's nice to meet people who you don't know and like learn from them really. And like I think especially in the London kind of music scene, there's like, you know, you kind of need to have your ear to the ground, especially if you're doing the kind of thing I'm doing, because otherwise you'll end up missing artists that, you know, then blow up, you know.
Do you get that sense when you walk into a room, people start whispering, "Oh my God, is the editor still listening magazine? We better make sure our guitars are in tune for this gig." Do you get that? You must get a little bit of that. You must get a little bit of that little frisson when you walk into a gig.
Well, it's funny. Like one of my writers the other day was saying that someone came up to him and was all like, "Oh, do you do writing for Still Listening?" And you know, and it made me happy to hear.
Yeah.
But I don't know. A part of me feels uncomfortable sometimes when it's a bit like that.
Do you feel it? I mean, look, as you said, you can't write about everyone, and you have to pick and choose. And you've got things you like and things you're not going to like. And I guess you probably got things that you might like a little bit, but think, "Oh, this is going to find an audience." Do you feel like a gatekeeper? I know it's a horrible word to say, but do you feel like a responsibility in that regard to sort of go, "I need to give everything a fair crack of the whip," or do you feel like I've just got to be prepared that some bands will be annoyed that I didn't review their stuff? Is that difficult to sort of deal with a little bit?
I think I get what you're saying, but I don't feel like a gatekeeper because I think if anything, I'm way more prone to respond to real people than a PR company.
Right,
So
right.
if some band from wherever has messaged me and has been like, you know, I've been following the magazine for a while, you know, like really, you know, I love the article you did with whatever, you know, and then I'll be more inclined to like, you know, listen to their stuff and give them the space, you know.
I think that's a really interesting point. It brings us on to the next bit I was going to ask was how is it best for bands to approach. I know that, you know, we have a blog on our site, and sometimes we get people who message and they'll go, "Hey, you reviewed this band that we like, and we think we sound a bit like you might like us." And yeah, I always click on that before the one that looks like they haven't really read anything on our site at all. And I know that bands can't read every blog and every magazine out there, but sometimes I think you've got to kind of, you know, pick two
At
or
least
three,
pretend.
at least pretend, right? Or you know, pick two or three magazines or blogs that you really want to get in and spend like a week reading each and then pitching it. But you know, how is the best way to get your attention or attention of someone who's still listening? Bearing in mind that everyone watching this, of you know, both people who will watch this, will now do exactly what you're about to say. So be careful with what you're saying.
I guess just that, you know, be genuine. I mean, be genuine's the real thing. Like if I get a message that looks like it's generically sent to a mailing list, like, you know, I get, you know, so many emails that it is hard to, you know, I do go out my, especially, you know, if it's a band messaging themselves, I'll always listen to it pretty much. But it doesn't mean that I'll enjoy it or want to put it on the site or feel like it's suitable, you know?
And is that tough sometimes when you hear a band or an act and you're like, but these guys are really great. They've clearly put a lot into this. It's just not in our kind of it's not in our kind of ballpark here. Is that quite tough sometimes to sort of go, oh,
Um, nah, because I feel like, you know, if I did have that, like, oh, this is great conclusion, then I would be like, yeah, let's do it.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. And what kind of is there any kind of genres that you wouldn't cover? I mean, does metal find a place in your magazine or
I'd cover anything, but I don't, I'm not knowledgeable enough about metal.
right,
So I don't
right?
have the deep kind of knowledge that would be needed to cover it in a, you know, in a serious way. I would love to expand and do more metal type stuff specifically. Like that is the one genre I feel like we don't really cover, you
Right.
know.
And it is a huge scene, right? And it's been like a consistent huge scene for like 40 years, metal. It's just never it's always there, right?
And there's great stuff, you know. I
Yeah.
love like stoner metal. I love like more like the thrash kind of like death metal as well. Like I do enjoy it. I just don't feel confident enough to have a voice on it, really.
One of the things with music journalism is there's this system Muso Soup and
Yeah,
systems like that.
yeah,
What's your just for people who don't know, Muso Soup and other things like that is you basically pay to upload your press release to a site who
yeah.
then sends your press release off to all the bloggers and websites on that site who then come back to you and go, hey, we really like this tune. If you pay us £9, we'll write a review of it, or £10 or £15. And it's a way for people to get coverage, right? Basically. What's your view on that?
It's not for me personally, but I do see some kind of merit in it, kind of. But I think if you're doing it for those reasons anyway, you probably shouldn't be doing it. You know,
The
like
the
if
writer or the band
the
who
right, you
right.
know, for the bands, it's great. You know, it's great for them to get the opportunity to just instead of paying like a PR company £2,000 to get nothing, you know, then they, you know, pay a way smaller fee to get, you know, a few little bits here and there on a few blogs. Like it's great. It is good for bands, but at the same time, it's a bit like they're only doing it because you've paid them a little bit of cash. Like they're not doing it because they actually think your music's good, and it kind of creates a world where, or a, you know, a collection of places that aren't really doing it for the like, oh, I think this is great. They're doing it because they're getting paid to write about something that they might not think's great, but they're going to do it anyway.
So you don't think does it therefore in a way benefit you guys because it makes you guys look even more authentic, right?
I guess to some extent, yeah.
Um,
I don't think anyone would know about that though, you know, but it's like, yeah, I think inside myself, I feel like that because I did speak with Muzo's Soup and, you know, after a while, I realized that it's not for us really.
because it would have been, let's be honest, it would have been a way for you guys to earn some money, right? To
Yeah,
you know, to earn some good money, regular income. You could have done it. You could have churned it out.
yeah,
You probably could have, but you've decided that no, that's not the way to go.
yeah.
Good.
You know,
Well,
and I got another email the other day from this thing that's like, um, I think maybe it's called Bands in Town. I don't know if,
yeah, it's a gig listing site,
yeah,
right?
so it's basically that, but for gigs, you know, and
Yeah.
it's like, you know, we want to cover the stuff that's like important to us, you know, not get paid to cover stuff that other people want us to cover. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I think absolutely, and I totally get it from a band point of view as well. That sometimes you just want a couple of blogs to put something about you, so that you can copy and paste a few lines and put it on your press releases. You know, this blog said this. But yeah, in terms of, is it actually moving the dial? Because is it you know, it's like eating sugar versus eating a nice meal. It's not going to nourish you for very long, right? Because it's not substantial, right?
Yeah.
You're listening to a No Distance Records podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow to get updates on releases, events, and other things we've not even thought of yet.
One of the things you do is you flag up new bands, your top 40 to watch. I think for this year, bands like Test Plan on Man, Women, Chainsaw, which is really good. Scarlet Wolf, who's doing really well. Um, there's some other bands in there that I saw which I really like. Who's that one? Rat's Tails.
Yeah.
They're a great band. They're a great
We're,
little band.
we're putting them on next month actually for an event.
There we
So
are. Fantastic. It all works out well. But um, what other bands or acts or genres can you see coming in? I feel like there's a lot of shoegaze around at the moment. I feel like that's had a bit of a resurgence. I'm not sure anyone's really broken through from that yet, but where do you see it all going?
it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, just on a walk home. I think about how like I feel like in the past I've been a bit on the money with like where things are gonna go, but at the moment it just feels like I don't 100% know where things are gonna go anymore. You know, I feel like mm, I do you know the band The New Eves?
No, I don't know them.
I feel like maybe there's something there with this kind of like, I don't know how to, it's like post-punk folk, really.
Right. Okay.
It's like a folk band with, I don't know, the guy from Television singing over it almost.
Right.
But yeah, it kind of, and I think it plays into a bit of this like the last dinner party, like white dresses and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that maybe does still have some stuff, but it'll never have the same success of the last dinner party. I think when you watch a band like that go from nothing to like winning Brit Awards and being on Graham Norton and being on Channel 4 News, and it's kind of like probably like what that whole scene was working towards for years. And now that a band has finally really reached that height of like what success can be, I'm curious to see what will come out of London anyway next. And I was thinking maybe, it might just be done for the kind of London scene for a bit. You know,
Yeah.
the next big thing probably won't be coming out of London.
Do you think
And
though the next big thing would be like a backlash to Last Dinner Party? I don't really in a negative way, but you have the band that are like that, and then you swing. You go from Nirvana to Oasis, you go from Pink Floyd to the Sex Pistols, right? So you have the kind of swing, the great swings, don't you? You think that seems to me that that's what could happen?
Well, I think that's where my, train of thought led with that kind of stuff. Is like, I think there is a gap in the market at the moment for like, some kind of like boisterous energy, some kind of like oasisy type thing. Because there's definitely a whole, age range of people who want it. It was just the other day someone was telling me how like that it was my mum saying that her mate's son had just bought like the Oasis album, and it was like complaining about how much it cost and stuff as well. But yeah, like they were like 12 or something, and it's like clearly there's still an audience for that kind of like laddish, rocky energy. And also like the older generations probably would resonate more with something like that than the last dinner party, I feel.
Yeah.
But whether that happens, I don't 100% know. I don't even think it will. I don't think, I think the industry doesn't really like taking chances, you know.
Do you think there's an irony that now anyone can put their music out thanks to streaming
Yeah.
and all that stuff? So you would think instinctively, oh, therefore, go forth 1,000 daffodils will bloom, but actually, it's all become very narrow, and actually, like you said, the risks aren't there because everyone thinks, well, a Taylor Swift can get me 80 million streams, so I want to find the next one of her, hence Olivia Rodrigo, that kind of thing. Do you think that actually this ease of getting it done has actually made it more difficult, bizarrely?
Yeah, I think it's worse than it ever was. I think there was a sweet period where maybe it was because, like, I think some of these bands, you hear this story of like them being grassroots, but really they weren't, in my opinion, you know. But I feel like,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by they weren't necessarily?
well, I feel like there's certain artists, like, I don't know if I 100% want to.
Maybe not name names, but yeah,
Well, yeah, I feel like there's certain artists, where they'll borderline claim that they, like worked on the scene, we're at the windmill doing all this, blah blah blah. But in reality, they've like done very like it's all been very
yeah,
manufactured
yeah.
and
They've done just enough gigs at the windmill and just enough gigs that will Blue
just
last.
enough to
Yeah,
tick a box. And then a
yeah,
year later, they'll go back to the windmill and play it and be like, yeah, the community, man, as if they haven't, the second they've been signed to, or like have like, I don't know, wet legs manager or something. They'll discard the people who were the early supporters of them, you know.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting, that kind of stuff. But what was your original question for?
It was just about how broad and easy it is to get stuff out there, but it seems to me that the days of the huge band or huge alternative band or alternative act, truly alternative, or truly independent, for me it feels like the last big one was Arctic Monkeys. There's like the last band that of that
Came
kind
off
of.
like social media type thing.
Yeah, and I feel like since then, there's been some bands which are really good and have certainly become mainstream, if you will, but not like I always think, bands your mum's heard of kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
Like my mum hasn't heard of Royal Blood, all those kind of things, but she's heard of Arctic Monkeys,
Has she heard of Wet Leg?
Yeah, she has heard of Wet Leg. And she probably would have heard of Last Dinner Party now, which is Graham Norton. So there we are, right? So so basically the measure now is if you're on the Graham Norton show, you are now successful. Is that basically
I feel like I get what you're saying, you know, and I really agree. I feel like the reality is you need a big team behind you. You're never
Yeah.
going to get to that stratosphere without, you know, a really good management company, a really big label with a lot of money to throw at you, you know, a great manager, a great booking agent, you know, you need the works, a great PR, great radio pluggers. You need everything going super hard. But, you know, that's just kind of impossible for a lot of bands, you know. It's hard enough, I think, for most bands to get like a booking agent, you know.
Yeah. And also it's hard enough for many bands to make any money these days because
Yeah.
we know what Spotify's done with the streaming, and that's just, I mean, it was already, you know, it feels like they're just kicking a corpse there. It was just awful what they've done with their streaming. I think we got slightly off topic. I'm asking you to save the record industry, Elliot, and I'm sure that's not what you want to be thinking about as we
No,
record this on a cold Tuesday night,
I
Monday
like
night.
talking about this stuff, man. I think it's really interesting kind of stuff to talk about, you
So
know.
well, going off that then, what do you think, you know, music magazines like you, small record labels like mine, what should we be doing to help foster? Is there something we can do to help foster it all, or is it just keep doing what we're doing and just keep working really hard? Or is there something missing, some sort of collaborative thing? What do you think?
Well, I think that kind of relates back into the stuff to do with community. I guess, you know, I think I like doing more of the community stuff and meeting people and like doing something like this, for example, because it's nice to connect with people, especially people who are passionate about music and really, you know, want to achieve something, you know, whether, and you know, that doesn't always have to be money motivated. It's like Big Richard Records, you know, I spoke to them about like, you know, what if Man Woman Chainsaw blow up and your label gets a bit bigger, but it's he's not thinking about it. He just loves doing music, you know, and loves, you know, which is how it should be, you know, and why I enjoy spending time with that guy Dom who runs it, you know.
Great.
But I think it does relate, you know, it's like into what you've just said. It's like I think the community and the smaller independent things, collectively we have a lot more power than people realize. And I think if we all came together as a team, we would have a lot more um ability to make things happen, you know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that we don't realize as a community the strength that we have, and we could, you know, work with venues more, and we could work with booking agents more, and we could just do all that stuff around here and talk to how much is bands getting paid at every gig, what's going on with that, you know, why is, you know, apps which previously said they wouldn't take a booking fee suddenly taking booking fees out of, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? I think that we sort of don't realize if we teamed up, then maybe we could make some changes. But anyway, that's for another conversation, perhaps, Elliot. But thank you very much, mate. I genuinely really appreciate this because you must get at least 25 million messages a day from people wanting your attention. So I really, really am grateful that you've spent this time talking to us and giving us your take and just your passion, man. And also, I have to hold my hands up and say that I did not have a subscription to Still Listening magazine. I now have a subscription to Still Listening magazine, and it is like what, £6 or £7 every 3 months.
Something like
Like I will go to a coffee shop, I get a coffee and a cookie, and I won't even think about the fact that it's £7. And
well, yeah,
and
it's the cost of a pint, you know what I mean?
exactly right. And it's like by doing that, I get to support something which I love and read a great magazine, and the website's great, and we'll put all the links into all your stuff. But yeah, man, like fantastic, and thank you so much. And you know, more power, all that jazz. Thanks,
No
Elliot.
worries.
Cheers,
Oh,
man.